Hello and welcome to this lecture on HTML. A two-part one. In the first part we'll start to look at how to create web page content in a way that best describes its purpose, describes meaning, how to structure that content to achieve that. Important, as we'll see, using the web standards HTML5, something called semantics, validation, good programming practice along the way. Now, back in the early days of the web, it's a bit like the Wild West, really, and that we had different web browser companies, which is Internet Explorer in the early days, Mosaic, Netscape, and they all supported slightly different coding ways of doing some things. So we made it rather tricky, as you can imagine, design a site that worked properly across multiple browsers. One of the reasons why web standards emerged were standards bodies such as the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, contributed by universities, industry, browser companies themselves, government and universities. And they agreed standards that are updated every now and again. For example, on the right-hand side there, you can see the standards for audio, PDF, presentation layer, and content layer, and those standards exist as well. And following those goes a long way to help content be cross-browser and cross-device and work well for disabled, visually impaired browsers as well. Importantly for us as well, as we'll see, it allows the separation of the content of the page and the presentation of the page. Why is that important? Well, imagine you've got a multiple device world these days, so you present the same content to different audiences on different devices in slightly different ways. For example, one column, 2, 3 routes and content to make it work better on mobiles, that kind of thing, dynamically and interactively, as we'll come to in future weeks. And it also supports easy maintenance of websites, because basically you can control the presentation from one file, potentially control the look and feel, therefore, the layout of potentially hundreds of thousands of web pages in one place, rather than individually go for each one of those web page files, change them to change, say, a simple font or a simple color. So it's more maintainable, much better to do it this way, as we'll see. Now, the content is made up using language HTML, which some of you may have met, hypertext markup language. And it exists of things called tags, which are basically instructions to the web browser how to mark up, how to define what it should do, and define the purpose of different parts of the web page. And these are part of HTML5 agreed web standards, as we've mentioned earlier on. Now, let's say, for example, you want to describe some content as a paragraph. The P tags do what they say in the tin. The opening one, see at the bottom of the page there, angle brackets around it, and a closing one for a slash in front, and angle brackets again at the end. And that's an instruction to tell the web browser to mark the content in the opening P, the closing P, as a paragraph on the web page. And we create web pages in different ways. One way we often do it is using Notepad++, see I made earlier. It's free software. You can get it home and use for the module. So basically, I say in our editor, we can type the instruction we want. ptech, keep it lowercase. Can't type. Type in a paragraph or something on those lines. I'll do my typing and spelling. There we've got a markup instruction that says start, turn on a paragraph, style, turn it off, the end, or we want it to be turned off there. We save that. We can locally test that by going to our OneDrive where we stored the file, right-clicking or double-clicking, and open it up in the browser, he said. Best to use Google Chrome or Firefox for testing. More standards compliant. Better start with those and then test on, say, Edge or something later on. And there we are, very simple. Our paragraph has appeared on the page. Okay. There are markup instructions, tags as well. There's lots of them. We won't bore you with all of them. Let's throw one in for the fun of it. Let's see on a heading. The most important type of heading for the page, the top page heading, H1. Call it top heading. I want something more imaginative. Save the change. Go back to the browser. Refresh, and there we are. The browser's rendered that. Interpreted the instructions in the opening and closing H1 tags. And made a top level large heading, the kind of thing you see at the top of a newspaper article or a book chapter or something like that. And obviously the browser by default renders them in a certain way. You can look about that later, as we'll see with CSS next week, to make it look more professional and better looking on the page. Okay, lots of these instructions. We'll make lots of them across the course of the module. Go back to PowerPoint. So as we alluded to before, making content descriptive is important. Telling the web browser what the nature of the content is an important thing to do. It also tells things like search engines, the nature of your content better, be more likely to be found in search engine results. And it helps accessibility browsers for visually impaired as well to understand what the page is all about. So you said start with the content you want and mark it up using these kind of tags, these instructions that best describe the nature of the content. So if it's a paragraph, mark it as a paragraph. If it's a list, use list tags, table tags, etc. That might seem obvious, but not always when you come to the program it isn't. So basically, bear in mind you need to use tags that have meaningful description to them, describe the content well that you're playing with and marking up. That's really important for good marks in the module. To bear that in mind. As I said at the bottom there, remember we're not concerned how the page looks just yet. Getting the content right and the right kind of tags to structure it, get the right meaning to the content on the page. How it looks will come to you next week and the week after. So for a web page that we use, is what the web gurus recommend, so a minimal kind of basic skeleton kind of set of tags, if you like. These are the ones we're going to use here as the basis of all of our web pages. Then we can expand upon those. Okay. Let's organize our page into various bits. Let's have a look. So the first tag is the doc type tag. And for the version HTML5, it's just that. It's quite simple. Some of the older versions are quite long, multiple line efforts. It's much clearer, simpler. And this doc type just tells the browser the version of HTML we're using, and therefore within the version what HTML tags are allowed in this version because they've changed over time, and what the rules are how to construct the HTML page. So it tells the browser that, and later on the validator as well will come to in a short while. HTML tag, if you notice in the page here, you've got an opening one in line 2, and a closing one down there on the end of the line, last line of the page there. So based on the opening tag and the closing tag defines to the browser this content between the two places is of type HTML, hypertext markup language. An HTML tag, I've got an example there of this lang equals en thing. An example of something you see quite a bit in tags is an attribute. It gives the browser more information about the tag. In this case, it's in the language of that tag is equal to en, which is English, to expect English in the page. I put quotation marks around them as it says in the comments there, because if you have attributes of space in, the browser can get confused and know what the beginning and end of the attribute is. So double quotes define beginning and end of that attribute value. So putting those in, you code clearer. Then you've got this thing called head section of the page, opening and closing head tags. This is kind of metadata about the page, sort of data about the page, information about the page, and what it's about, what it contains. So this has tags that live inside it. The title tag, just in the tin. That's how you define the things that appears on the top, the browser tab, top of the page, and gives the title for the page. It's also useful for search engines. They can read the title and can help work out what your page is about, how to index your page properly for people to find you based on a descriptive, good, clear title. Meta, any more metadata about the page, in this case the character set. Again, it's going to have to be in play there. Character set UTF-8, standard Western character set that we're basically telling the browser to expect to use. And the body tags, that's the one you'll do the most with, when between them anyway, because they define the content where it begins and ends for the stuff that appears in the main browser window on your web page. The opening body tag and the closing body tag there, but all of the tags on your page really, most of them anyway, go between those opening and closing body tags. They're ended up and appear within the web page on the screen. As we said, important tags, use these for every web page that you create from now on. Can I pop back to Notepad++? The one I made earlier. Strange names of these files. There we go. So basically there's the skeleton structure of the page, dot type, etc. Title I set, as you will in the next size in the labs later, to my first university web page. And then you can plug in kind of you want in the main body of the page. Shouldn't really exist by itself. It'll work, it's not good practice. It's really sit inside of the kind of the body tags of the page, like so. Okay. So what we'll see is that makes a little difference visually, but it's right now and correct. Yeah, so the bits in the web page stay the same, but the thing that's varied there, so if you notice at the top of the page, I've got my first university web page, the title is now displayed on the tab at the top of the page there. I said it would be. Something else you can do, I'll point out on here. These tags are called block level tags, the H1 to P. So by default, they stretch out to fill the full horizontal width of the page. Table tags and list tags are similar ones. There are other tags that are called inline ones. So let's say inside our paragraph, extend the text to paragraph about stuff. We can include an inline tag inside of that block tag. Say make that sort of in the visual browser bold by using the HTML tag strong. So again, we're going to start the bold, the opening strong tag. We're going to end the bold, closing strong tag at the end. It'll mark up the word in between, the word about, in a slightly different way to the rest of the paragraph, because we've embedded this inline tag inside of there, which you can do. And refresh that web browser page. So there we go. Paragraph is rendered as before, but inside that we've rendered the word about in a strong kind of fashion. And a visual browser, as I mentioned before, that's bold. It was a browser for the visually impaired. That could be maybe read out a bit louder or something like that. So it can be interpreted in the best way for the particular browser to handle. Which is what all browsers do. They interpret the tags in the best way to render them that they are programmed to do. Okay. That's enough of that. So back to the slides. Yeah, so that was the basic skeleton page structure. But also nowadays recommend that you try and structure the body of the page itself into areas. Now if you look at a typical web page, it has areas. The BBC homepage, for example, there's clearly sort of a banner, header block across the top with the page title, logo in, search bar, that kind of thing. And maybe a navigation distinct area below that, main content of the web page, footer, and things called the sides, which kind of things like extra news stories, weather reports, that kind of thing. So secondary content of the page. So they're usually distinct parts of a page. Not all the same, but these are common ones. So we should try and group our content. The module will want you to do this to get good marks on the assignment. Group the content into these kind of grouped areas, as we'll see. Visually, one day it'll look like that on the right-hand side. But again, here, one I made it earlier. Go back to for a second or two. Page structure. Seems like quite a lot in this. And there is on first sight. This is just a reference, really. We'll break this kind of thing down kind of later on. But if you look at this page here, we've got the first 7 lines of the kind of things we met on the previous page. Opening part of the skeletal HTML, title, body tag. The end of the page, you've got closing body, closing HTML, as before. But inside of that, we've now got various grouping area tags, like header, this group here, for example. So we're saying that basically the banner at the top of the page, defined as header, not to be confused with head. So header, opening, closing tag there and there. And we said inside of that, so we want to make a top level page heading. My favorite place, of course, the university, because yours as well, I'm sure. And I might have an image in there as well, or a search bar. So any HTML you want to be grouped at that top part of the page goes in between the opening and closing header tags. Main navigation tags. Again, I'll come out of this later. We've got main navigation there inside these opening and closing nav tags. Main part of the web page. Main meat of the page the user's going to mainly focus upon. Defining opening and closing main tags. And a footer at the bottom of the page there for good measure as well. Let's feed that in a browser. See what we see. And you probably think, well, Gary, you can't see those structures areas, those areas, can you? You can't. You can't. They're there, and they're doing a good job for the browser what's what and the search engine what's what, etc. But for now, we can actually see them. Later, we'll style them in CSS so you can see them. The moment that it's grouping the content behind the scenes, if you like. I'll show you a way to see where those are throughout the CSS as well in the future lecture. Okay. Now just bear in mind the takeaway is we're going to want you to try and group content once you have more content later on. And there's our example there for your reference. Now the last thing I want to look before we take a break and go to the second part of the lecture is adding even more structure and meaning to the web pages. You can see this is a key theme, key importance to the module to getting good marks. So basically within the page areas like the header, as we saw, or the main ones, or even other parts of the page as well, you can have headings. But a bit like reading a report, a book, a magazine article, etc. You've got headings in there. Typically web pages you do as well. And they help usability because you can help people to pick things out on the page by scanning down, finding the subheading they want to read about. So they want to read about me for some reason, about my course, where I come from. You can scan down the page quickly, look at those headings, pick them out and say, I want to go to that part of the page, please. They also, behind the scenes, tell the browser and the search engines how your page is structured. It's important to get these kind of things right. And the first one you have should be an H1, as we said. Remember, it's not about size. Sometimes people think H1 to H6 means largest to smallest. By default, that's how they're rendered. But really, it uses this thing called CSS later to get the size the way you want it. The important thing from the structure perspective, the content perspective, is it's important to the level of heading. The H1 being the most Important thing about the page, it tells you what the page is about, in this case, migrate site. Second thing, most important, is about me, and an equal importance in this one would be contact. So both about me and contact could be H2s. And the my course where I come from would be H3s, because they live inside of about me. You see what I mean? Sub-detail of about me. So there would be H3s, and if the sub-detail of my course where I come from, they could be H4s to H5s to H6s, etc. Again, that order is important and useful. So just before we take a break, where you spend a few minutes trying to create a heading structure if you're going to build a page about your hobbies. So you can come up with some headings and subheadings about your hobbies and how these should be put in place. And take a few minutes to do that. I'll pause speaking for a second. Obviously, hopefully you pause the slides at that point. Let's have a look at how I would solve it all here in person. Of course, we could do it together. But let's have a little look how I might do this about a page about my hobbies. Where's the Notepad++? So I'm going to amend that one we did and change that. So maybe you look at something similar in the workshop tasks, but let's have a look. So this could be called simply my hobbies, or something more imaginative like Gary's hobbies or Emma's hobbies, whatever your name happens to be. And you want to change the title as well, of course, to reflect the nature of the page. So my hobbies webpage, for example. And then let's say, what kind of hobbies have you got? Well, let's make a couple up. Let's say one type of hobbies you have come under the category of sports. That's an H2 because it's a sub-detail of my hobbies, sports. Another one, same level of importance, so H2 again, could be about, again, just comes off the top of my head here, watching TV. For the opposite of sports, isn't it really? Couch potato one. Pretty more me. So sports might break down into different kind of sports you do. You can indent these in if you want to make sure they live inside of the H2. You don't have to, but I'll do that because I think it kind of makes it clearer when you write the code. So let's say this is going to be, as you guessed, in H3. Hopefully you did this. To define one of the sports, and let's say that is football, to go with a popular one. So there we are, H3s, defining a heading 3 about football. Let's see, got another H3 in there as well, but another hobby, a sport you play. Let's say it's swimming, for example. And so on you would go. Swimming broke down further. Underneath that you would have an H4 about swimming. But if you want, we'd go kind of in there. For now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, what you can actually do is underneath the headings, you may want a paragraph of detail about your swimming activities. Kind of where you swim, how many meters you can do, whether you belly flop, like me, whatever details you want, you can put in there, your paragraph. Again, you could have been something about football as well. I could have broken down into some paragraphs of detail. I'm just going to type some gibberish in about football. But if you get the idea from that, if obviously we'll cover this again in the workshop, just give you a flavour of how to do things. So it gives a kind of structure to the page. H1, H2s, and of course the H1 could have been inside of header tags for the bar at the top. So we could have done this. So that's part of the header bar at the top of the page, or will be when we add style to it. Indenting is always a good idea because it makes it clear that H1 header is inside the header block, as could other search bars, whatever you want, could go in there as well in the header top bar of the page. And what we're defining here is probably the main content of the page. So header might be something that displays on several web pages, as banners are often do, similar banners, different web pages on a website. Whereas the main part might vary between a page to page. Then I began to build in some main content there on the page, the bottom. And I could add, say, a footer in there as well if I wanted to. Kind of getting carried away now. So I like HTML. And a footer, let's say with kind of a paragraph in there. And you could say, you know, by Gary, copyright by Gary 2021, whatever you want to do. And we save that and reload that file. Got lots of files open now. Don't know which one it was. Preserve live demonstrations. That one. So you can see now I've got a bit of a structure to the page. Heading 1. Okay, you scan down, you'll pick up, well, there's sports, there's watching TV. They're clearly the second level headings. Third level headings with paragraphs of information between them. And it's a style property, of course, CSS and more content. It would look more like a proper web page. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now at that point. You just have to go and stretch your legs, have a break, and we'll be back for the last half of the lecture. In the next part, recording will be up on Blackboard. Thank you very much. See you shortly.